Hey, did you know that the Kellogg's summer football camps are in full motion and you can claim a free day? All you've got to do is head to www.kelloggsfc.com and enter the code 7349. Terms and conditions apply, subject to availability. Welcome to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. Well, I've got to say, my goodness, is it nice to have the Premier League back. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about a particular team who have had a real roller coaster of a journey when it comes to the English top division and the most glamorous division in the world. Of course, the Premier League. A team of a fan base. No, I'm not talking about a little fan base, a massive fan base, a big club who really want to stay in the Premier League and do ever so well. In fact, they've probably had more ups and downs than any other Premier League side. Of course, in this episode, we're going to be talking about that team from the northeast of England, one of the most northern clubs in the whole of English football. It is Sunderland AFC. Before we get into this episode properly, a massive shout out to everyone who's hit the follow button listening to this podcast wherever you're listening, but also a reminder to check out my brand new show, Soccer for Kids, which is exactly the same as Football for Kids. So if you like this, I'm sure you'll like Soccer for Kids, but it's all about soccer in the United States of America. We cover US teams, players, and all things soccer that side of the Atlantic Ocean. So, just search for Soccer for Kids wherever you listen to this podcast and it should appear right in front of you. Give it a listen, give it a follow, and if you're feeling really kind, please give that show a 5-star review as well. Right, no mucking about. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Because as I record this on Sunday the 17th of August, I'm sat here with a hot cup of coffee and smiling because I've just watched my favourite programme, Match of the Day, on the BBC. The Premier League is back and there is even more football to watch today. So there's plenty of reasons for me to be smiling. But also, the reason I wanted to make this episode is because I've just watched the sheer joy on the faces of the Sunderland AFC fans as their side banged in 3 goals and picked up 3 points in the opening game of the Premier League. They haven't seen their side in the Premier League since the 2016-17 season. It's been 8 years since they were in the top flight of English football. So I thought, let's go on a bit of a journey with Sunderland AFC, aka the Black Cats. Firstly, I think it's important to establish and stick some facts on the table about the club and the size of them, because they're a proper big club. The Stadium of Light, is not far off 50,000 in capacity. That's bigger than Aston Villa, bigger than Chelsea, bigger than Brighton, bigger than Palace, and many of the others who we associate with the Premier League today. But here's the thing, even when Sunderland have slipped down the leagues and had some horrendous seasons, like some proper terrible seasons, their supporters have stuck with them every step of the way. For years, they have consistently been one of the highest performing clubs when it comes to attendance, season ticket sales and tickets in general. And for me, that makes them a proper club. No matter how tough times have got, their fans have been with them every step of the way. So when you see them in the top flight of English football, it is a wonderful sight to see those fans with them again. A long time ago, back in the 1890s, Sunderland were the kings of English football. Yes, you heard me right, the kings of English football. They were so good that people used to call them the team of all talents, which makes them sound like a superhero squad. They zoomed past everyone and won 3 league titles in just 4 years. Imagine scoring so many goals that the other teams have stood there scratching their heads wondering, how on earth do we beat this lot? For decades, the Black Cats kept rubbing shoulders with the very best, usually finishing near the top. In fact, they were so stubborn about staying in the top division that it wasn't until 1958, a whopping 68 years after joining the Football League, that they finally slipped down to the second tier. And this was when they got tangled up in a bit of naughty business. It was a scandal about paying players too much money. Oops. That meant that the mighty Sunderland, who once gobbled up all the trophies, had to spend a few years trying to claw their way back up. From then on, they became a bit of a seesaw club. Up to the first division, back down to the second. Up again and down again. Like a football version of a very bumpy roller coaster. But then came 1973, a year that every Sunderland fan knows by heart. They were in the second division at the time, and hardly anyone gave them a chance in the FA Cup. But in the final, they faced Leeds United, the giants of the game at that time, and Sunderland did the unthinkable. Yep, you guessed it, they won. They won the FA Cup for the second time. To this day, only 2 other clubs have managed to lift the FA Cup while not being in the English top division. It was Sunderland's last big trophy, but what a fairy tale it turned out to be. But let's fast forward to the 1990s when the Premier League began, but more precisely, the year that Sunderland officially made it to the most glamorous division in the world. It was 1996. They just won the league the season before and were firing on all cylinders. But it all went horribly wrong in their first season, and they were relegated immediately, finishing 18th. Ouch. Then they spent some time battling it out in what we know as a championship today, desperately fighting and clawing their way back to the Premier League. And in 1999, they did it. Promoted once again. But could they stick around this time? Could they do it? You bet they could. Not only did they stick around, they finished 7th. They were right up there with some of the biggest teams in the league. They were a proper force, and a team that the big clubs like Man United and Arsenal and so on actually worried about facing. And in the following season, they finished 7th yet again. Sunderland were really making a statement, and those times in the 1800s looked to be on the horizon once again. Except the following season, with high hopes of finishing even higher and potentially playing European football, they just about escaped relegation by 1 position and 4 points, finishing 17th. And the following season after that, they got in an even worse state, and they were relegated. Not only were they relegated, they only won 4 games all season. And at the time, they set a Premier League record for the worst season of all time when it comes to points, with only 19 points to their name. It was back down to the second tier of English football for Sunderland, and another almighty dip in the journey and the roller coaster ride for Sunderland AFC fans. Anyway, it was a 2004-2005 season a few years later, and they won the top division again, to be promoted to the Premier League again. It was one massive party in Sunderland, full of mixed feelings for the Black Cats fans. However, things were about to get even worse than they were last time they were in the Premier League. Not only did they finish rock bottom, but they were relegated with a new record to their name. Even less points than they had before. Even less points than anyone had ever finished with in the Premier League. 15 points in total, and only 3 wins all season. They were relegated to the Championship, battered and bruised. Not only did the players feel battered and bruised, but the Sunderland fans felt like they'd done 15 rounds of Muhammad Ali. So, back to the Championship it was. And you won't believe who got themselves promoted yet again. Yep, you guessed it. Sunderland won the Championship yet again. And they were back in the Premier League yet again. However, would they be able to stick around? Yes, they would. Not for 1 season, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8. 9 seasons they stuck around until they ultimately finished rock bottom again. You've probably heard the term of a yo-yo club. But my goodness, Sunderland have had their ups and downs. They've been coming, then they've been going. They've been up and then they've been down. Their highs have been almighty highs of hope, of dreams, of European football, of all the wonderful things that goes through the minds of the fans when their teams are winning. But their lows have been real lows. And at one point, they even went 20 games of being beaten on the trot. 20 games without a win. 20 games without even a draw. But after 8 years and some unbelievable ups and downs, some terrible records, some brilliant finishes, some playoff finals, and almost everything you could possibly think of. The Black Cats, Sunderland AFC, are back in business. They're back in the most glamorous league of all leagues, and they've kicked it off in style this time. A 3-0 win against the mighty West Ham United, proving many football fans and pundits wrong already. But the sheer joy that I saw in those Sunderland fans' faces as I watched Match of the Day this morning made me think we need to do an episode on Sunderland and the Premier League. How long will they be about this time? I, for one, hope that they do fantastically. And I can't wait to watch that Sunderland-Newcastle derby on the 13th of December this year. So there you go, the rollercoaster journey of Sunderland and the top division of English football. And remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about the Football for Kids podcast. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Stop by Sherwin-Williams and get 30% off select paints and stains August 15th through the 18th. It's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Refresh your home inside and out with colors that make every space feel brand new. From cozy interiors to stunning exteriors, we've got the perfect shade for your next project. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.